Good morning, it's Wednesday, the 22nd of April. I'm Maret Gwyn, and this is Europe Today, your daily dose of news and analysis broadcast live here from Brussels. On today's show, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced that the Druzhba oil pipeline has been repaired and can resume operation. It comes just in time for a gathering of EU ambassadors today in Brussels, where Hungary could drop its veto on the EU's €90 billion loan to Ukraine. Also, we'll have an exclusive interview with Luxembourg's Deputy Prime Minister Xavier Bettel. He reacts to yesterday's ruling from the EU's top court, which found Viktor Orban's anti-LGBTQ laws in Hungary in breach of the EU's values of equality and minority rights. And US President Donald Trump says he has extended the ceasefire with Iran until negotiations between both sides conclude. It came as the White House put Vice President J.D. Vance's trip to Pakistan for a second round of talks on hold. Amid the energy crisis, the EU says it could import jet fuel from alternative suppliers, such as the US, to avoid potential shortages. But first, to our top story this morning, because Kyiv says that the Druzhba pipeline, which was damaged in Ukraine 3 months ago, can now resume operation. It's set to end months of standoff pitting Hungary and Slovakia against Ukraine. Our correspondent Sándor Síros is with me in the studio to discuss the details. Sándor, good morning. This announcement from Zelensky yesterday that the Druzhba pipeline can now, in principle, return to operation could prove to be quite significant.
Yes, I completely agree. So this is the pipeline that brings cheap Russian oil through Ukraine to Hungary and to Slovakia. And it has been shut down at the end of January by a Russian strike and has not been repaired ever since until yesterday. But yesterday, Zelensky announced the repair in a tweet. He said that Ukraine has completed repair work on the sections of the Druzhba oil pipeline that was damaged by a Russian strike. The pipeline can resume operation. Now, this step could end tensions between Hungary, Slovakia and Ukraine. And also this issue caused huge tensions in the European Union because Hungary blocked the EU's €90 billion aid package to Ukraine because of the Druzhba issue. Now everything can be fixed, hopefully. When the oil will start to flow, Hungary will lift its veto. It could happen today at the EU's ambassadors' meeting in Brussels. And right after, the Commission could send the money to Ukraine because they said that they did their paperwork already.
We've been doing all the technical work on our side to make sure that once all the steps are in place, we will be losing no time.
And Sándor, this obviously has caused a big political earthquake. When it comes to the politics behind this, how do you interpret this move now from Zelensky to unblock this?
Well, we can only guess for the moment. What we know so far that Hungary and Slovakia from the beginning accused Ukraine of using the Druzhba issue for political blackmailing and to cut Russian oil flows to Europe. On the other hand, Ukraine also said that it's technically a very difficult issue to repair this pipeline and it could take months. But for the record, Zelensky said that he would not repair the pipeline in March, he said, because he's financing Russia's war. And it's also true that, Ukraine never accepted independent European experts on the ground to check the situation. But the timing is very interesting and very important. We are 10 days after the Hungarian elections. Viktor Orban, who has been absolutely hostile towards Ukraine, has been removed from the power, and Péter Magyar, who could be more flexible, will get the new government. So this could be a signal also from Ukraine to, in a way, settle this situation. I would like to have one final sentence on Orban, because it's very interesting what Orban is doing by lifting the veto. He's keeping his word, and he's also removing obstacles from the future government of Péter Magyar.
Okay, Shandor, thank you so much for that. And we will be keeping an eye out, of course, for the outcome of that meeting of EU ambassadors later today. But now, moving on, EU foreign ministers gathered in Luxembourg yesterday in what was the first major EU meeting since Viktor Orban's electoral defeat. The outgoing foreign minister, Péter Szijjártó, skipped the talks. Orban is also expected to skip a gathering of EU leaders in Cyprus on Friday. During yesterday's meeting of foreign ministers, they failed to agree on proposals by Ireland, Spain and Slovenia to suspend the EU-Israel Association Agreement over the deteriorating situation in Gaza and ongoing violence against Palestinians in the West Bank. Back from Luxembourg and joining me in the studio this morning is our correspondent Sanna Marin. Sanna, briefly bring us up to speed on that meeting yesterday and tell us about your interview with the Luxembourgish foreign minister.
That's right. So EU foreign affairs ministers, the numbers weren't there to pass this proposal to suspend the Israel-EU Association Agreement in relation to alleged war crimes in Lebanon, also across Palestine. But there will be a proposal from Sweden and France to potentially ban goods from settlement areas. That will be looked at by Maroš Šefčovič, the EU Trade Commissioner. But I also caught up with Xavier Bettel, who is Luxembourg's Foreign Affairs Minister. And at the time when we were chatting, the European Court of Justice emerged with this ruling which said that Viktor Orban's anti-LGBT law in Hungary back in 2021 was actually deemed a breach of EU law. And I asked Xavier Bettel about this because he was former Prime Minister of Luxembourg and he once addressed this issue with Viktor Orban directly.
It's not the fact that I'm gay that I just fight for gay rights, but it's the fact that I fight for minorities, and it's always easier to fight against the smallest group in some countries. And for me, European Union is a peace project, but it's also a rule of law and the rights of minorities. And I don't like to teach other continents if on my own continent, in my own family, I have people blaming me for being gay. And as I told to Viktor Orban at that moment, it was not my choice. And the most difficult part of that was to accept myself and then to get blamed because I'm different for him. And, as I said, being gay is not a choice, but being homophobic is a choice. And to do politics by blaming someone reminds me seriously that how it starts also with Jewish people and then with gypsies and etc. So I want to be intolerant to intolerance. That's the only intolerance I accept, and I will fight for that. And I remember I told also in the meeting, and I shouldn't speak about the meetings, but I told to Viktor at that moment when he wants also a ban about in Hungary to speak a bit even about LGBTI questions, that I didn't become gay because I watched TV.
What was Viktor Orban's response to you? Because you were equals, you were both prime ministers of your country.
It was a very clear answer from Viktor, because usually he always answers, and he did not answer. He didn't say anything. And in the meeting room there was a silence when I took the floor. It was not in the agenda. And I took the floor. I asked Charles to be able to raise the topic, and I raised it. But and I'm not the gay prime minister. I'm prime minister, and I was prime minister, and I am gay. And it's just the fact that I wanted to tell him how I feel the situations for, in fact, the people who have no opportunity to tell it to him. That's the people living in his own country and being considered as not normal.
But this is a momentous Foreign Affairs Council, because the last one back in February was just a torrid affair, because Péter Szijjártó, the Hungarian foreign minister, who's not actually showing up here today, was blocking the €90 billion loan for Ukraine, blocking access to the European Peace Facility, blocking the sanctions, blocking progress on Ukrainian membership of the European Union.
I'm very honest. As you know, I'm maybe the boss of diplomacy, but not the most diplomatic. But I'm always honest. I said to Peter that they moved in a direction where most of us are counting the days till the elections in Hungary are going to happen. And this is not good.
You said that to Péter Szijjártó at the last Foreign Affairs Council. And what did he say to you?
No answer. But I meant it, that they moved in that direction. So they made it for most of us counting the days. And this is never good, when you just hope that there will be a change of government to be able to move on. And so that's the reason why I really promote for a lot of topics in foreign policies to be able to have a majority vote and not unanimity. This is not good when one country can block on foreign policy. We have today also later in the day discussions about the Middle East. I hope we will be able to have an agreement, but usually we are not even able to sanction settlers. And when we see what's happening in Palestine and in Israel and in the West Bank, it's a shame when we see what's happening in Lebanon. And this is where sometimes it's very frustrating.
Just finally on the Strait of Hormuz, I mean, it sort of changes every hour. But from an EU, NATO perspective, what do you think can actually be done?
But the fact is, to say NATO is a defensive. It's not an offensive union. It's a defensive union. If one country is attacked, that the other will help it. Article 5. For the moment, there is no attack against the NATO countries. It was an attack from NATO countries and also from Israel against Iran. That's the reality. We can't change the history. And we have not been consulted before to know if we would love to join or not to join. So I think we should not be part of the war, but if we can be part of the solution, that be something for the boats. And don't forget, we speak. A lot of countries are now just interested in petrol, but we should not forget that there is even humanitarian aid which is not able to go up. So there will be millions of people who won't get food because of it. So, and we cannot say we cannot let the Iranians decide of millions of people who need humanitarian support.
Moving on now, US President Donald Trump has said overnight he will extend the ceasefire in the war on Iran until negotiations progress and Tehran puts forward a proposal. For more, we can bring in Euronews' Laila Humaira, who's in Doha for us this morning. Good morning, Laila. Great to have you on the show. Bring us up to speed, if you can, on what happened overnight.
That's right, Marit. Good morning to you guys in Brussels as well. And we were watching very closely what was going to happen with these negotiation talks. And with the ceasefire deadline looming, as you said, President Donald Trump late on Tuesday, our time, posted to Truth Social. And here was what he had to say. We have been, and I quote, "We have been asked to hold our attack on the country of Iran. I have therefore directed our military to continue the blockade and remain ready and will therefore extend the ceasefire until such time as their proposal is submitted and discussions are concluded one way or the other," end quote. Now, that puts the ball back in Tehran's turf. There have been no official response from Iran as of yet, but that's where we stand, an extension to the ceasefire until Iran puts forward a proposal.
And Laila, despite this truce now, the situation in the Strait of Hormuz remains very volatile.
Yes, absolutely. And since Saturday, ships, tankers and oil vessels have essentially found themselves back to square one, idling in the waters of the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. We had the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi saying the U.S. blockade is an act of war. Meanwhile, U.S. naval forces have said that it's directed 28 vessels to turn around under this Iranian port blockade. They have also seized at least one Iranian-linked vessel in the Gulf waters and another in the Indo-Pacific region. But there's also been a development in the waters as well. In the last hour or so, the UK Maritime Trade Operations reported an incident northeast of Oman. And after that, the Iranian state media reported that it had enforced what it called maritime law on a container ship that had been ignoring repeated warnings.
Okay, Laila Humaira there for us in Doha. Thank you so much for that update. But now, Sanna Marin became Finland's youngest prime minister at the age of just 34. During her tenure, she oversaw major shifts in Finland's foreign policy, including its accession to NATO in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Our Europe editor Maria Tadeo sat down with Sanna Marin yesterday and started by asking her about Peter Magyar's victory over Orban in Hungary and what it could mean both for Hungary and the European Union.
I think it gives hope to Europe, and I know that I am, and I know that many in Hungary and many in Europe are relieved with this outcome of the election, of the Hungarian parliamentary elections, because it also gives now much more space of solutions about Ukraine. We all know that Orban have Ukraine under his pressure on many occasions and many situations. So, of course, we hope that now things will flow forward. And also I think it's hope for Hungarian people.
And of course you were Prime Minister of Finland. You sat at the European Council. You also sat with Viktor Orban. Over the past few weeks we've seen tapes that leaked of alleged conversations, and some of them caught on tape very openly, between the Hungarians and the Russians. Is that something that you suspected? And is it just a red line has been crossed already? The idea that this communication was certainly happened before and after meetings?
Of course, I have worked together with Viktor Orban in European Council, and we have had many difficult situations and discussions, for example, concerning Finland's and Sweden's NATO membership. Hungary was a second of the last countries that ratified our NATO membership, and there have been many situations. And we know that Orban has very different view on the war in Ukraine, and also, for example, rule of law, applying rule of law in Europe.
Ukraine cannot win it. You said objectively, Ukraine cannot win it. You've said Ukraine can win it. So
Ukraine must win it. I would say Ukraine must win it. If Ukraine doesn't win the war or have an outcome on a peace negotiations that will be sustainable, that would be fair for the Ukrainian citizens, and that will provide security to Europe and to Ukraine in the future. If we won't have that, we as Europe, we are under jeopardy, because Russia is, as we speak, they are preparing themselves, they're modernizing their army, and they're preparing themselves to much wider fight.
So they're preparing for war with Europe? The rest of the continent?
I wouldn't rule that out. And we also need to prepare. And for that, we need strong Ukraine, because Ukraine has the largest, most functional and modern army with modern warfare experience. And without Ukraine, we are vulnerable. We need their lessons learned. We need their help. And we need to understand that we are as dependent on Ukraine and Ukrainian capabilities, that Ukraine is dependent on our help.
And you mentioned NATO. There's been a lot of friction over the past few weeks. Certainly the president of the U.S. making it very clear that he believes the Europeans have done very little in Iran, and also has said that NATO without the U.S. is a paper tiger. When I hear these words, this is exactly what Russia would like to hear. NATO is a paper tiger, and the U.S. may consider reassessing their relationship. How concerned are you? Because a country like yours certainly needs a strong NATO.
I'm very glad, and I still support our decision joining NATO. I think it was the right one. At the same time, we have to understand and realize that NATO is a different organization now than it was when we and Sweden joined.
Because Trump is a president?
Because of the changing relationship between US and Europe. It has already changed, and it is changing, and this is a fact that we cannot escape. And it means that we need to focus on our own game. We cannot anymore only rely on the US presence and US capabilities. We have to build our own. And now we are speaking European defense capabilities and European unity, European military forces. And I think this is extremely necessary discussion. And we should also discuss more about the European nuclear deterrence. This is a discussion that I see happening already, and the necessity to have it.
And you can watch the full interview with Sanna Marin tonight at 5:45 on our programme 12 Minutes With. Now, since Monday, tens of thousands of migrants have applied for legal status in Spain as part of the government's programme to regularise 500,000 undocumented migrants. Jakub Janis explains.
The queues formed early on Monday morning. Almost 43,000 undocumented migrants have registered in just the first 3 days of Spain's new regularization scheme, starting a program that the government says could eventually grant legal status to 500,000 people. And the public debate has been polarized. Supporters cite economic necessity and social justice, while critics worry about public services and national identity. However, let's set aside the emotions for now and look at the facts. Spain is already home to 10 million people born abroad. That is 1 in 5 residents. And many of those applying for legal status come from Colombia, Venezuela or Morocco. They are a key part of the workforce, filling essential roles in agriculture, tourism and domestic care for the elderly. And regularization turns that shadow workforce into a formal contribution to the state. but also grants them access to public healthcare or legal labor protections. And this is the breakthrough. Usually, to get papers through a process called arraigo, undocumented migrants must prove they have been in Spain for 2 or 3 years. This scheme slashes that requirement to just 5 consecutive months. However, and that's important, we are talking about 1-year renewable residence permit, not full citizenship. It does not grant the right to vote in general elections or provide an immediate path to nationality, and individuals with criminal records will not qualify. And the plan has already caused major friction in Brussels. Spanish residency permit is effectively a Schengen pass, allowing free travel across Europe for 90 days in any 180-day period. EU officials worry that this could act as a pull factor, undermining the bloc's new, stricter crackdown on irregular migration. However, one thing is certain: Spain will either become a laboratory for a shrinking continent or break European solidarity in this most divisive issue in the EU.
Jakub Janes there, and that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back with more news, more analysis, same time, same place tomorrow. In the meantime, do get in touch with us with your questions and tips. You can email us on europetoday@euronews.com, and we'll see you very soon here on Euronews.